Valentine's Day, a day meant to celebrate love, passion, and devotion. But what happens when love turns into obsession and devotion becomes deadly? Would you ever suspect that someone you once loved could be the one to take your life? How can a relationship that once held promises of forever end in tragedy? This is the story of Jasmine Holloway, a vibrant 27-year-old mother who believed in love even after heartbreak. She thought she had moved past the pain of her past relationship. She thought she was safe. But on February 14, 2024, her belief in love led her to a meeting that would cost her everything. In the parking lot of a bustling shopping center in Raleigh, North Carolina, Jasmine agreed to meet her ex-boyfriend, Derek Lawson, to discuss their children. A seemingly simple exchange, one she had done many times before. But this time, Derek had no intentions of talking. And he wasn't alone. What followed was a senseless act of violence, witnessed by his new girlfriend, Shayla Roberts, a crime that left Jasmine's family shattered and her young children motherless. How did it come to this? How did a love story turn into a true crime tragedy? Let's unravel the dark events that led to this heartbreaking Valentine's Day murder and the chilling warning signs everyone needs to recognize. A love story that turned sour. Before we continue, please take a moment to subscribe and turn on the notification bell to stay updated. Your support means the world to us, and we're truly grateful to have you here. Thank you. Jasmine Holloway and Derek Lawson had met as teenagers in their small North Carolina town. She was drawn to his charisma. He had an infectious confidence that made everyone around him feel like they were the most important person in the room. Derek, in turn, adored the way Jasmine's laughter could light up any space. They spent long summer nights talking about their dreams, believing they would always be together. Their love story seemed destined for greatness. Jasmine was a hardworking student with aspirations of becoming a nurse, while Derek was an aspiring entrepreneur who dreamed of starting his own auto repair business. In their early years, their passion for each other was undeniable, and they became the couple everyone admired. They attended prom together, went on road trips, and even got matching tattoos, symbols of a love they believed was unbreakable. By the time Jasmine turned 20, they had 2 children together, a boy and a girl. They built a home, and for a time, it looked like their youthful dreams were coming true. But beneath the surface, cracks began to form. Derek's protective nature turned into possessiveness. What once felt like deep love began to feel suffocating. He would question her about her whereabouts, grow irrationally jealous when she spoke to male friends, and slowly started isolating her from those closest to her. Jasmine tried to hold on, convincing herself that Derek's temper was just a phase, that he would change once the stress of adulthood settled. But love wasn't enough to fix what was broken. As the years passed, Derek's anger grew volatile. The once charming and affectionate young man became someone Jasmine hardly recognized, a man prone to violent outbursts and controlling behavior. Arguments escalated into terrifying fights, and Jasmine knew she had to leave for the sake of her children. Despite her deep love for the man she had once envisioned a forever with, Jasmine made the heartbreaking decision to walk away. But leaving Derek would prove to be the most dangerous decision of her life. By the time Jasmine turned 20, they had 2 children together, a boy and a girl. They built a life together, but beneath the surface, cracks began to show. Derek was controlling, possessive, and prone to anger. Over time, his jealousy became suffocating. Jasmine tried to hold on, hoping that the man she fell in love with would return. She reminisced about the early days, how he used to surprise her with handwritten love notes, how they would dream about growing old together. But over time, those dreams crumbled under the weight of Derek's possessiveness. His jealousy escalated from questioning her about phone calls to forbidding her from seeing friends and family. At first, she excused his behavior, believing his love was just intense. But soon, the isolation became suffocating. The once charming and affectionate man she knew had transformed into someone unpredictable, someone whose love came with terrifying conditions. The physical abuse began subtly, tight grips on her wrist during arguments, a shove here and there. But then came the bruises, the nights of fear where she would tiptoe around the house, afraid of triggering his wrath. He would apologize the next morning, swearing it would never happen again. And each time she wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe that the man she had loved still existed beneath the monster he had become. But love wasn't enough to fix what was broken. After years of emotional and at times physical abuse, Jasmine made the heartbreaking decision to leave. It wasn't just for herself, it was for her children. She couldn't allow them to grow up in a household where love was synonymous with control and violence. And so one night, while Derek was out, she packed their things and left, praying that freedom would mean safety. She had no idea that leaving would be the most dangerous thing she could do. Derek did not take the breakup well. At first, he pleaded, sending Jasmine long messages filled with apologies and desperate promises to change. He swore he would be better, that he would go to therapy, that he couldn't live without her. When Jasmine didn't respond, his tone shifted. The messages became hostile, filled with accusations and veiled threats. He began showing up unannounced at places she frequented, the grocery store, the daycare, even outside her workplace. Friends and family warned her to be careful, but she didn't want to believe that the man she once loved was capable of something truly dangerous. Then the calls started, dozens in a day, all from unknown numbers. If she answered, there was only silence. If she didn't, she would receive texts. "You think you can ignore me? We belong together." Jasmine, determined to protect herself and her children, moved on, securing a restraining order against him. But like many abusers, Derek didn't respect boundaries. The legal document meant nothing to him. It was just another challenge, another excuse to escalate, and he did. For a while, life seemed to improve for Jasmine. She secured a good job, found a new apartment, and was thriving as a single mother. She even started dating again, finding happiness with someone new, a kind and supportive man who made her feel safe for the first time in years. It seemed like she had finally escaped the cycle of abuse. However, despite her newfound happiness, a lingering unease followed her. She frequently felt like she was being watched. Strange, anonymous calls would disrupt her nights, always silent on the other end. At times, she swore she saw Derek's car parked near her workplace, but it would vanish before she could confirm her suspicions. Then, disturbing events started escalating. One morning, Jasmine found her car tires slashed in her apartment complex's parking lot. A few days later, a cryptic note was left on her windshield, reading, "You can't run from the past." The words sent a shiver down her spine. This wasn't just a warning. It was a message meant to instill fear. A few days later, Jasmine noticed her trash bins overturned outside, their contents strewn across the driveway. At first, she thought it was a random act of vandalism, but then she spotted something that made her blood run cold. Among the garbage was a framed picture of her and Derek during happier times, now shattered into pieces. She reported these incidents to the police, but without concrete evidence linking them to Derek, there was little they could do. The authorities advised her to stay vigilant, but Jasmine knew deep down that this wasn't just some act of coincidence. She started feeling an unshakable sense of being watched. She avoided being alone, double-checked her locks at night, and even considered changing her routine. Despite her precautions, the feeling of dread continued to grow. Every unexpected sound at night made her jump, and every unfamiliar face she saw on the street made her heart pound. Derek wasn't just trying to scare her, he was letting her know he was never far behind. Her new boyfriend received a menacing message from an unknown number. "You think you can take what's mine? Watch your back." The message sent a chill down his spine, but he didn't want to alarm Jasmine. However, the harassment didn't stop there. That same night, Jasmine heard noises outside her window, shuffling feet and the distinct sound of heavy breathing. When she looked out, she saw the shadowy figure of a man standing by her car before disappearing into the darkness. The next morning, she found deep scratches along the side of her vehicle and a single red rose tucked beneath her windshield wiper. A twisted token, a warning wrapped in an illusion of love. Terrified, she reported the incident to the police once again. But they assured her that without concrete evidence, there was little they could do. A week later, an even more horrifying event shook Jasmine to her core. She woke up to find her apartment door slightly ajar, though she was sure she had locked it the night before. Nothing appeared stolen, but an eerie sense of intrusion filled the air. On her kitchen table, there was a single note written in smudged ink. "If I can't have you, no one will." At that moment, Jasmine realized this was more than just stalking. This was a countdown to something far worse. She underestimated how far Derek was willing to go. Little did she know, he wasn't just watching, he was planning, and his obsession was about to take a horrifying turn. Frightened but determined, Jasmine considered moving again. But uprooting her children and her life wasn't easy. She underestimated how far Derek was willing to go. Little did she know, he wasn't just watching, he was planning, and his obsession was about to take a horrifying turn. But Derek wasn't ready to let go. He spiraled after Jasmine left, engaging in reckless behavior, drinking heavily, and blaming her for his downward spiral. Then, in late 2023, he met Shayla Roberts, a woman 6 years younger, who became his new obsession. Shayla was smitten with Derek's charm, unaware of the darkness within him, or perhaps choosing to ignore it. She became a willing participant in his toxic world, fueling his need for control and revenge against Jasmine. Derek convinced Shayla that Jasmine had ruined his life. He painted her as the villain, the reason for his suffering, and soon, Shayla found herself caught up in his twisted obsession. Jasmine had been co-parenting with Derek, despite their rocky past. She believed he deserved to be in his children's lives, as long as he remained responsible. However, in the weeks leading up to Valentine's Day, his behavior had become increasingly erratic. He sent her long, emotionally manipulative messages, vacillating between apologies and veiled threats. Jasmine was uneasy but convinced herself that she was overthinking. On February 14, 2024, Derek called Jasmine under the pretense of discussing child support and visitation. His voice was calm, almost too calm, as he insisted that they meet in person. "I just want to do right by the kids," he said. Despite the pit forming in her stomach, Jasmine wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe he had changed. She arrived at the shopping center parking lot at 6:30 p.m., scanning the lot for his car. What she didn't know was that Derek and his new girlfriend, Shayla, had been there for over an hour, watching her from a distance, waiting for the perfect moment. Shayla, sitting in the passenger seat of Derek's car, was fully aware of what was about to unfold, but said nothing. She had convinced herself that Jasmine was the enemy, the woman who had wronged the man she loved. She saw this as Derek's way of reclaiming control. As Jasmine stepped out of her vehicle, Derek approached with an eerie calmness. His expression was unreadable, his body tense but composed. His hands were stuffed deep into his pockets, but his posture was rigid, unnerving. Their conversation started formally, but quickly spiraled into an argument. "You think you can just erase me from my kids' lives?" he hissed, his eyes narrowing. Jasmine, sensing the anger rising in his voice, tried to de-escalate. "Derek, I never wanted that. We need to figure this out for the kids. Please, let's not do this here." Derek scoffed, stepping closer. "Oh, so now you want to talk? Now that you've got some other man raising my kids, you replaced me like I was nothing." Jasmine took a step back, her heartbeat quickening. "That's not true. You have every opportunity to be in their lives, but you have to do it the right way. You can't keep threatening me." Before she could finish, Derek suddenly yanked a crumpled photo from his pocket and shoved it in her face. It was a picture of her with her new boyfriend and their children at a park. "You think this is okay? You think you can just play house with my family?" His voice trembled with rage. Jasmine's stomach twisted. She hadn't posted that picture online. How had he gotten it? The realization sent a fresh wave of terror through her. She tried to stay calm. "Derek, this isn't healthy. You need to move on." That was the breaking point. Derek's eyes darkened with an almost inhuman intensity. "Move on? You don't get to decide when this ends, Jasmine." Then, in a split second, Derek's entire demeanor shifted from simmering rage to explosive violence. His hand shot out, grabbing Jasmine's wrist in a bruising grip. She gasped and tried to yank away, but his strength overpowered her. Shayla, still seated in the car, watched in silence. She didn't scream, she didn't intervene. She just watched as Derek reached into his coat and pulled out a .45 caliber handgun. For the first time, Jasmine's face filled with pure terror. "Derek, please." But there was no time left. Then in a split second, Derek's entire demeanor changed. His face twisted with rage. Before she could react, before she could even register the danger, he reached into his coat and pulled out a .45 caliber handgun. Shayla, still seated in the car, watched in silence. She didn't scream, she didn't intervene. She just watched as Derek took aim. Jasmine, wanting to maintain peace, agreed. She arrived around 6:30 p.m., parking her car near the entrance of the shopping complex. What she didn't know was that Derek and Shayla had been waiting for her, plotting. As Jasmine stepped out of her car, Derek approached with an eerie calmness. His eyes, dark and unwavering, bore into her as if trying to read her every thought. Their conversation started tense but civil. Derek's voice was measured at first, but there was an underlying sharpness to it, like a blade waiting to strike. "You think you can just cut me out of my kids' lives? Like I'm nothing?" he asked, his tone laced with bitterness. Jasmine exhaled slowly, keeping her voice steady. "Derek, this isn't about you or me. This is about what's best for them. You need to respect the boundaries we agreed on." A flicker of rage passed over Derek's face. His jaw tightened, his fists clenched at his sides. "Boundaries? Is that what you call it? Keeping me from seeing my own kids while you play house with someone else?" Jasmine felt a shiver run down her spine. She had seen this look before, the way his body tensed before an outburst. Instinctively, she took a small step back. "I haven't kept them from you. You made choices that led to this. I just want peace for all of us." Derek let out a bitter laugh, shaking his head. "Peace? You don't get to decide that, Jasmine." He pulled something from his pocket, a crumpled photo of Jasmine and her new boyfriend with the kids, torn at the edges as if it had been gripped too tightly, too often. "You think this is okay? You think you get to just move on?" Jasmine's breath hitched. That picture wasn't public. The realization struck her hard. He had been watching her. The unease she had felt over the past few weeks was real. He had been following her, studying her every move. Her mind raced, recalling every strange occurrence, her trashed garbage bins, the eerie feeling of being watched, the shadowy figure outside her window at night. It had all been leading to this moment. A cold sweat broke out on her skin as she took an involuntary step backward, her pulse hammering in her ears. "Derek, how did you get this?" she managed to whisper, her voice trembling. Derek smirked, his grip tightening on the photo. "Did you really think I wouldn't know? Did you think I would just let you forget about me?" His tone was laced with bitterness, his eyes burning with an intensity that sent chills down her spine. Jasmine's heart pounded as she glanced around, searching for an escape. But Derek had positioned himself between her and the car. She was trapped. And worst of all, she could see the glint of something metallic beneath his jacket, just before his hand started to move. Shayla, still seated in the car, remained motionless, her face void of emotion. She knew what was coming, yet she did nothing to stop it. Jasmine swallowed hard, her breath coming in shallow gasps. "You don't have to do this, Derek. Please, think about the kids." But he wasn't listening. His hand emerged from his coat, and this time she saw it clearly, the cold, deadly shine of a .45 caliber handgun. Jasmine barely had time to react before Derek raised the weapon, his face twisted with fury. She screamed, but it was already too late. "Derek," she started, but before she could say more, his expression twisted, a mask of fury overtaking him. In one swift motion, he reached into his coat. Shayla, still sitting in their car, watched from a distance, her breath held. She didn't intervene, she didn't even blink. Jasmine took another step back, her mind screaming at her to run, but there was no time. Derek pulled out a .45 caliber handgun and raised it. The world seemed to slow as Jasmine gasped. "Derek, please!" But it was too late. Shayla sat in their car, watching. When Jasmine tried to walk away, Derek pulled out a .45 caliber handgun. There was no time to react. He fired once, then twice, then again. Witnesses screamed as Jasmine collapsed to the pavement, blood around her. People rushed to call 911, but Derek and Shayla didn't stay. They fled the scene, leaving Jasmine to die alone on the cold pavement, on the day meant for love. Paramedics arrived within minutes, but it was too late. Jasmine Holloway was pronounced dead at the scene. News of her murder spread quickly, sending shockwaves through the community. Authorities launched a statewide manhunt for Derek and Shayla. It didn't take long to track them down. They were found 2 days later, hiding in a cheap motel in South Carolina. Derek showed no remorse when arrested. He smirked as officers took him away, while Shayla wept, claiming she didn't know he would actually go through with it. At trial, Derek's defense tried to argue that the shooting was not premeditated, but the prosecution dismantled their claims. The evidence was overwhelming. Text messages between Derek and Shayla planning the attack, surveillance footage of them waiting in the parking lot for over an hour, and Derek's own chilling words to police upon arrest. She thought she could just move on. The jury deliberated for only 4 hours before returning with a guilty verdict for first-degree murder. Derek was sentenced to life without parole. Shayla, though she didn't pull the trigger, was convicted as an accessory to murder and received 25 years in prison. Jasmine's story is one of love turned lethal. It serves as a tragic reminder of the dangers of domestic violence and obsession. Her family now raises awareness about intimate partner violence, hoping to prevent other women from suffering the same fate. Her children, now growing up without their mother, will forever bear the scars of that fateful Valentine's Day. If there is one thing to take away from this heartbreaking case, it is this. Love should never come at the cost of your safety. If someone shows you who they truly are, believe them. And if you feel unsafe, seek help before it's too late.